This country has always produced meat. Historically we would have big mobs of red kangaroos that would move around and follow the rain and then be gone. And so the pasture was rested behind it. It was just a very natural process.
These rangelands have always supported herbivores. In other words, they've always had large mammals grazing on them, so they've always produced meat in as a form and different forms. But rangelands just refers to an open area of land, basically, and with under natural veg. 75% of Australia is actually arid rangeland, and if you consider the arid rangelands is probably less than the 250 mil annual rainfall.
So when we're looking at producing food, protein in particular, we need to look at the environment and the kind of protein production system that it's suited for. Now the rangelands are not suited for producing crops, and so we need to use the rangelands to produce meat, to produce protein, to feed a growing global population.
In the semi-arid rangelands, the environmental outcomes are very closely linked to agricultural outcomes, because we're working here with a very much intact landscape where it's primarily native pastures, and when you improve the health of these native pastures, everything wins. So you have increased production in terms of grasslands, a lot healthier, but with that health comes just better species diversity in terms of flora and fauna.
Australia's got a history of the rangelands being, I guess, one of the most productive parts, consistently productive. It doesn't get the kudos of the cropping areas perhaps, but the wool industry and now later the protein from red meat from natural areas. They're still natural areas. The landholders work in harmony with their pastures and their species and look after the country, because the thing that they harvest is with their sheep or cattle is the grasses and the herbage that grows. So unless they look after the best species in that, their production is going to deteriorate.
So I think future protein production domestically and for the world will have to really utilise the natural resources that we've got, and the Western Division can do that low input, high quality product really well compared to other forms of agriculture in Australia and around the world.
Red meat production probably suits the rangelands better than anything else at all, because it works well with the environment and it's a chance to regenerate land as well as make a very viable income.
And that's turning it into a business that then improves the country. And so here we produce between 50 and 100,000 tonnes of goat meat every year. So we've got the output of the meat, and we've also improving the country as we go.
I guess with our land management, we never view it as sustainable, it's regenerative, and we take the attitude that our landscape used to be much more productive than what it is now, and therefore we have the opportunity to improve their landscape.
I suppose the 35 years that I've worked in northern South Australia and western New South Wales, I've realised that people's management of this country has improved tremendously.
One of the things we are confident about is that climate change will increase climate variability.
We now have considerable evidence that where we're able to manage the total grazing pressure, that's the combination of both domestic livestock as well as native and feral animal populations, the grazing management can actually be used as a tool to restore degraded areas.
Conservative stocking is a great opportunity to minimise the effect of grazing on the landscape, regenerate land, put carbon back in the soil, and generally leave the land for the next generation in a better state than we found it.
So recent research, we've shown there's a direct link between ground cover, in particular litter and perennial ground cover, and soil carbon. So if you're managing an area for conservation as opposed to managing an area for livestock production and producing meat from those areas, and there's no net loss or disservice to the environment because of that, why would you not be using that landscape for growing meat? These outback areas in our rangelands are native ecosystems, so there's this perception that they need to to not be managed, they can look after themselves. But that's quite the opposite because of a long history of land use change, in particularly in the introduction of domestic herbivores and increases in native and feral animal populations. The extensive areas that are covered by rangelands mean that even a small increase in carbon, because they are very low levels of soil carbon there, but because of the extensive areas, that 80% of Australia that's covered, if we can get small incremental increases in soil carbon, that represents large amounts of abatement and mitigation potential.